Well, it's not every day that I learn that the property I'm going to be going to potentially has a pool or a deck over top the septic system. Now, how do I know this is potential? Based off the county records, the septic should be in the back left of the property. When you look at the aerial view from Google Earth, you can see that there is a massive wooden structure with a massive pool on the left side of the house. So, more than likely, once I get to this property, we're gonna figure out that the septic system's underneath of this deck, and it might make things a little bit more difficult to evaluate it and to maintain it. So I'm gonna drive over there now, and I'm gonna take you with me. We're gonna take a look at this system, see, is it under the deck? If it is under the deck, what's it look like? And let's have a little bit more of a conversation of why you shouldn't put structures over your septic system. So I'm gonna drive over there and I'm gonna talk to you in a few seconds. All right, so we just got here and we're getting everything rocking and rolling. And fortunately, we don't have to worry about the deck being over top the septic. We got a little unlucky with that particular one. As soon as I started recording the actual septic tank, the neighbor decided to kick on that power washer and it got super, super loud. So I had to wait until they were finished, find a good spot to sit down, and I'm gonna walk you through exactly what all we saw on this particular inspection. So when we got there, we started walking around. We saw that the septic tank was accessible by a clean out at the surface, and the dry well was also accessible by a clean out at the surface. Now, the county record said that we have a tank to a dry well to a drain field in that order, right? This was something that was very common in the late 70s, early 80s, especially in this particular county. Now, the reason why they would do it in series versus having a distribution box was just simplicity's sake. Nowadays, we use a distribution box to separate out multiple components. A distribution box is just a little concrete deal, basically where you have one line in from your septic tank, and then you'll have at least two lines exiting. Most commonly, you'll see at least three, because most places in our area will have 3 trenches. Now, there are some properties that only have a trench off a distribution box, and there are some properties that'll have 5. It just depends on the perk rate of your particular soil. In this particular circumstance, though, we don't have a distribution box, so don't even need to worry about it. Septic tank functions just like every other septic tank would, where you got a big concrete box, you flush a toilet, all that wastewater plus the solids goes to the tank, heavy stuff falls to the bottom, lighter stuff stays to the top, and then it basically clarifies all that liquid. Now, as that liquid's clarified, it's moving on to the absorption system. As we've discussed before, dry wells are just a big hole in the ground. Basically, it's a big cylinder, they dig it out, it's usually 8-foot diameter, and they're gonna put cinder block in a dry stack in a circle. And as the water goes in, the water will then seep out, and the stone on the outside of that block will basically help open the soil up to allow the wastewater to dissolve into the soil, and the bacteria and all the nasty bits get stuck in the soil. The soil is your filtering media, right? The drain field is going to be a very similar concept, except for rather than being wide and tall, it'll be about the width of a bucket, so between 2 and 3 feet in this particular circumstance, 2 foot, and then it's going to be about 60 foot long and about 9 feet deep. They back that track hoe up, dig out the trench, backfill it number 2 limestone, and a perforated pipe. The main thing that we need to discuss, though, is the septic system potentially being under a deck. Now, we got lucky. This house, it's not underneath of the deck, so that is a win in the first step. Very easily could have had a problem with, as soon as we get there, it could have been underneath the deck boards, and there's not much you can really do with that. If you have a deck over top of your septic system, it basically means any maintenance is going to be really difficult or almost impossible, especially if a baffle's missing. Today just must be the day of loud noises. First, we have the neighbor power up the power washer, making all sorts of noise, and then now, as we're having our discussion, we get the military helicopters flying overhead, and they took a few minutes to decide to stop doing that. So let's continue. We have a deck, right? If the deck is over top your septic, it's going to prevent any good maintenance of your system. That's why whenever you have a septic system, the state and the county do not let you build a deck over top of your system. Now, obviously, when you're building a deck, you have to pull a permit and make sure that everything's approved, you've got designs, and the person who's building the deck is licensed. In Maryland, though, you are, as a homeowner, allowed to build on your property or do any of the trade work yourself. The rule is, though, you have to make sure that you're doing the stuff in the correct way that anybody who's licensed would have done it. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if you're going to build a deck, the rule is for the licensed guy not to put the deck over top the septic system. So that means that you, as a homeowner, also cannot put the deck over top of the septic system. Back in the day though, people just slapped in decks willy-nilly, or what's to stop somebody from putting in a deck, not telling anybody? The house changes hands 2 or 3 times. This happens a lot, where if one person does it, they sell it, next person doesn't know about it, they sell it again, so now the third person doesn't know about it, and that's when we start to have our problems. The main concern with having any structure over your septic system is excessive weight and the inability to properly maintain things. Wood's heavy, right? If you have a deck, even a small one, it can still weigh several thousand pounds. That's a lot of weight, especially if you put the footer right on top of the septic tank. Those tanks aren't designed to be holding that much weight plus the weight of the dirt. So by putting a structure on top of the tank, you do run the risk of cracking it or causing structural damage, meaning you might end up having to replace the tank in total. Which, if you have to replace a tank that's underneath of a deck, guess what you got to do? Remove the deck in order to replace the tank. So it just further compounds your expenses. Now, if you have a system that is going to be serviced, such as pumped, yeah, you can still make it work when you have a deck. You just have to remove some boards, or hopefully they put a little hatch to where you can get the hose in there and actually suck out what you need to do. But if you have to replace a sewer line, a baffle, or even a lid, it gets a little bit more complicated when you have that deck overhead. But now we know a little bit about the cons of having a deck over top of your septic system. But let's talk a little bit more about, well, what happens? Is this something that can hold up a real estate transaction, for example, or maybe a permit? No, unfortunately. So the answer is probably what most people don't expect, but in the state of Maryland, if you have a deck over top your septic, there's nothing really making you do anything about it. So when you're inspecting a septic system for a permit or for a real estate transaction, there's actually a rule book, and that rule book's very clear on what is and is not acceptable. Now, when you're doing an inspection, we don't really use the term pass-fail. Now, obviously, if you have sewage backing up and it's completely everywhere, or the septic tank's collapsing, yes, that's a failure, but they tend to use the terms acceptable versus unacceptable. And the rule book is very explicit on what is and is not acceptable. In the state of Maryland, the rule book is explicit on a confined structure or a dwelling over a septic system is not acceptable. So if, for example, we have a deck that is not enclosed and you can't live on it, that deck is acceptable with concern. You may be asking, well, what does that mean? And acceptable with concern means that it's okay, but should it look like that? No, probably shouldn't. So if you have a deck over it, it's acceptable with concerns. But if you had a shed over it, now it's a problem. You can't put a shed because it's enclosed. Same thing goes with it. Let's just say you have a deck over top your septic and then you make it into a sunroom. The moment you make it into a sunroom, unacceptable. You cannot have that because it's an enclosed structure over top of the septic system that could potentially be a dwelling. Additions or carports on top of a septic system, not a good idea. If the carport, like really the only time I've ever had the carport become a problem was you have the house, driving pad, wall, but the wall connects to the roof. So because it's connected and part of the structure, that classifies as a problem for the septic system, and you can't do that. I've only ever had that happen once. It's not a super common issue, but these are the things that can start to pop up if you're looking at buying a house or if you're trying to renovate an older home. Most of the time, whenever I see issues with a deck, it almost always seems to be houses between 1940 and 1980. Anything post 1980, very low likelihood of having an issue with the deck and the septic in tandem with one another. If you want to find this rule book, all you have to search is MALPA Field Guide. It's very easy to find on Google. All you do is type that in and you'll find it. It's MOWPA Field Guide. MALPA is Maryland's On-Site Wastewater Professional Association. It's going to be basically the people who write the rules prior to the wastewater board's new rules. They're supposed to be coming, but that was like 2 years ago. They still haven't put them out. So we might get updated rules eventually, but right now MALPA is the rule book that everybody uses for inspections on permits and for real estate transaction. So if you're looking at buying a house and you want to know what is and is not acceptable, that field guide's gonna tell you what you're working with. If you're already owning a house and you're looking to build an addition on your house or build a deck or put a pool or something to that effect, having that guide helps you kind of navigate a little bit more of like what to expect. The benefit of having that thing easily available for anybody is you can check your inspector, right? If you hire somebody to inspect your system, you know the same rules that he knows, and you can challenge him, right? Or if he does say that, like, hey, you need to do something, now you know he's telling the truth. He's not blowing smoke, right? My biggest pet peeve with a lot of people in my industry is they'll say, hey, something's broken, you need to fix it, when it's marginally broken or it's just old. They're looking for easy money, and they see people who don't know what they don't know, and they see that they can take advantage of it. So having that guide is a huge resource for a homeowner to have, and a buyer as well. With all that being said, this particular one turned out to be pretty easy and pretty straightforward. Everything was working, everything was doing what it's supposed to do. It's a little bit older, but you know, at least it's not underneath the deck. So if you're looking to build on your property, it's very important to make sure that you know where your septic system is, have the lines scoped, right? Most of the guys in this area, at least in the Baltimore area, have a camera, and most of them can at least tell you, hey, it's right here and it's 2 foot down. Don't build, don't drill, don't do anything right here. Having that knowledge will basically keep any project you're doing on track and not let any issues with the health department or permitting office get in your way. If you have a house that has a deck over top of your septic system, you might not have any problems right now, but one day you will. And it's very important to make sure that you're preparing for that eventual reality of having to deal with that problem. So if the deck's starting to rot before you replace it, might be a good idea to consider moving the septic and or moving the deck so that way it doesn't become a problem down the road. Nothing sucks more when I go to a house and the sewer lines collapsed and it's underneath of a brand new stamped concrete patio, or if it's underneath the deck or a pool, because guess what? To fix your sewer line, if you put it underneath of all that stuff, now you got to tear it up. And if it's stamped concrete, you'll never get it to match, and it's just a slog to deal with. So do all that underground utilities first before you do any of the above ground stuff, and you'll more than likely be fine. Otherwise, you potentially might have an issue that makes you regret having not done it prior to. If you found this informative, if you found this useful in any way, hit that like button, hit subscribe. I'm trying to change up my style a little bit, do more of like a vlog style where we talk about what we're doing throughout the day, and I want to transfer my knowledge to you so that way I can help you as a homeowner grow. We're going to talk about wells, we're going to talk about septic systems, some home repairs, some DIY stuff, all the projects that you can use at your house to save some money, because I get it. Times are tough. Not everybody has a lot of money. I try to save wherever I can, and I want to show you what I learn when I'm trying to save some money. So if you enjoy this style, or if you enjoy my content, hit that like button, hit subscribe, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.